Welcome back to Invest in Square Feet, the podcast where we decode the mysteries of the real estate market one square foot at a time. I'm your host, Matt Shields, and today we've got a truly intriguing episode lined up for you. Joining us is the real estate maven Ivan Barratt from BAM Capital, ready to spill the beans on the current market dynamics. We're diving headfirst into how these challenging conditions are actually paving the way for some rare and golden buying opportunities. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just dipping your toes into the real estate waters, Ivan's insights will help you navigate and conquer today's market like a champ. Get ready to uncover some serious real estate gold. Let's get to work.
Yeah. So again, from that sort of rich dad category of education, if you remember from, I think it was the cash flow quadrant where he first identified a B quadrant business as one that you could walk away from, come back in a year, and it would actually be larger. And so that really resonated with me from a think big perspective. And so I, at an early age, wanted to grow a very big company. And so for me, it's growing a real sort of large company that becomes its own organism, its own living, breathing, beautiful machine of people that can go on even past my time on this planet.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like that transitions beautifully into talking about growing and scaling companies as well. When you were first starting out, what were some of those first things that you looked at offloading onto some other people, or like how did you look at scaling and growing this business? And what kind of popped in my head, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Buy Back Your Time. It's a great book. How did you consider buying back your time by bringing in other people to be able to do things that you didn't like doing or weren't great at doing? If that
No,
makes
absolutely. And we could do a whole podcast on just that question, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly important as I matriculated from being a solopreneur and really wearing every hat in the business myself. My only other outside help there from a human capital standpoint was I had a bookkeeper that would come in and work on the books because I didn't want to screw that up. Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Work Week, had a lot of influence early on there on buying back time. It took a while to get traction there, and that was some of the hardest periods or one of the hardest chapters of growing the business, especially early on. I was a property management company before I started raising capital for larger apartment deals. So I just hung out a shingle and started managing basically anything I could get my hands on where I didn't have to carry a gun, because I realized a couple of things that would give me the street cred and the learning curve to be able to execute on larger deals. It would also bring in cash flow much faster, being a service provider to other investors. Because gosh, Matt, if I can sell you today on managing your 3 duplexes in Indianapolis, or your condo that you can't sell because it's 2010, 2011 and you're underwater, if I can convince you to hire me, that's maybe a couple $100 a month of cash flow versus looking at 100 opportunities, finding one rental property that I can, one small multifamily deal that I can burr. Back then, they didn't even call it the burr method yet, but right, you buy it, you renovate it, you rent it, you refinance it, and then you do it again. That takes a long time and it's capital intensive. And so I was able to scale this management company first and get it large enough to where I could start doing my own deals. And then I could shed the third-party management when we achieved scale. But those early years were very tough. It was a revolving door, hiring and firing people. That's one of those things that I'm not great at. I've been lucky and had a few wonderful people come into our organization. I'd say that's more God at work than me. I'm generally not that great because I just hire people I like. And about 4 or 5 years in, we really started bending the growth curve. I found a great partner. We've been partners ever since. Very complementary skill sets. We're opposite in many ways. And I found a few early key people that bought into this idea. What if we had a management company where people like their job? And once that really started informing a lot of the decision making, and the other thing I'd hit on there, even when there was just a few of us, Matt, is asking myself or the team, what would a big company do in this situation? How would a big company handle this? How would a big company organize this, solve this problem, fix this mistake?
Mhm.
Because I would often tell the team, we are not a small business. We are a big business that today just happens to be small. And so
Love that.
having that mindset early on, and still to this day, I'm not making decisions based on how to be the best syndicator or sponsor of deals. It's okay. And I don't want to sound arrogant when I say this, because I'll never be as big as a Blackstone, I don't think, because I like my
You never know.
lifestyle. But you never know. You
Yeah.
never know. Maybe the next generation will take it there.
There you go.
But what are the Apollos, the KKRs, the Blue Owls, the Blackstones? How would they decide this issue we're having today? What would they do in their organization? Because at the end of the day, that's our goal too, is to be a large investment manager, to be a great partner, to provide an amazing service to the investors that come alongside us.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love the mentality of your small company. You guys are quite large today. Do you still have this mentality where you're still a small company and looking up? What would the big guys do at this point? Do you still
Oh
deploy
yeah,
that?
we're still at $1.3 billion total transactions, about $1 billion of AUM right now across our 4 funds. We're still very much a boutique firm.
Yeah.
And there's some really great advantages to that. If you think of those big companies as like an oil tanker, it takes them a lot of energy and time to shift direction, to change direction.
Yeah.
Whereas like we're on like a little speedboat, and we can be much more nimble and much more reactionary to changes in the market. But as we look out into the future, it helps inform hiring, right? Maybe I don't need a chief investment officer today, but I'm going to need one down the road. So how do I start looking at that candidate and finding that person and bringing them on now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a bunch of those anecdotes in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's really important to us. We've got this amazing culture. It's really one of our 2 big differentiators
Hmm.
is the culture here. And so it's a problem as you grow, but it's a great problem to have and to try and figure out how to solve. It's how do you maintain culture and continue to scale?
And is that culture basically sprung from the idea of the property management company having people have a job that they like, that they actually enjoy? Is that kind of the main culture glue, if you will, or are there other elements that have grown larger over the years?
Yeah, that was the big question that sort of started the conversation and really got people thinking about it. And most of the credit goes to others on the team who are better at the execution side than I am, and who believed and took that proverbial baton and started running with it. That evolved into core values. My favorite is when people grow, BAM grows. We're a loyal, loving family. Now, family looks a little bit different when you're a business, but to our team that's loyal to us, we are very loyal to them. We've got a fun, quirky spirit. If you're straight-laced, buttoned up pretty tight, you're probably not going to fit in at BAM.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's just not how we roll. And then we work hard, we play hard, we win. And those are our core values. They're not aspirational. They're who we are. We hire to them, we defend them. And you'll notice the resident is not in our core values. We want them to have a great experience. We want them to enjoy their time at one of our communities, but our employees will be here much longer than them. And it's just a fun, rewarding thing to be able to impact so many families that have joined what we call the BAMily. And
I love it.
Without them, my life gets much harder. I can't work any harder, Matt, than I have now. I passed my ability to work harder long ago. Now I would have to sacrifice marriage, kids, fitness, fun with the family if I was just working hard all the time. And I know I'm just rambling on here about culture, but these are the things that really help inform how we operate in the world and how we look at where we want to go in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like there has to be an element of drive that you've developed in yourself and in your team around you. And one of the challenges that I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is the whole idea of work-life balance and being able to instill that in the company. And so many people, that's incredibly important, being able to have that work-life balance and what that means to specific people. And you identified with it a few minutes ago when you were saying how you would have to sacrifice the life side of things at this point to be able to work harder. I'm curious what your thoughts are around instilling that, whatever you want to call it, that work-life balance in the capacity where people are happy. People don't feel like they're being pushed to the max or anything like that, but you still have these goals and have these things that you're trying to achieve and you're still getting there. So I guess it's like an operational question where how do you push your team enough so that you achieve whatever those goals are, but you don't push them enough where you start breaking things in their personal lives and whatnot. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've got a friend in the management business. She's a very capable woman. She's running a management shop at a competitor, and she kicks ass.
Mm-hmm.
She works 70 hours a week because that's just her personality, right? And the leadership team for her current firm doesn't yet understand that is a recipe for disaster somewhere down the road. Humans can only do that for so long before, like what you said, before something breaks. And so I think my partner and I have maybe just a better understanding of what that looks like. And again, as a loyal, loving family, we try to instill in our teams and our leaders that people have lives, right? And they have children, they have spouses, they have pets, they have all these other things in their life that need attention, or things can start breaking. And gosh, there's no easy button. There's no easy pill. There's no memo I can write where it's just all going to be perfect all the time. It's a constant. We've got quarterly events for different teams. We bring in everybody twice a year and throw a big party. My favorite is the Christmas party at the end of the year. Just for the record, I did not say holiday party. It is, we love everybody, but it's a Christmas party.
Yep.
And it's like a freaking wedding, man. People are wearing their best, plated dinner, big after party afterwards, open bar. We spend, I don't even want to know how much on that. Big award ceremony. Everybody who's been there for 5 years, 10 years, they're recognized. It is just one of my favorite nights of the year. And I know we were talking more about work-life balance, but there's so many little things that go into it. And what I've realized the more I've been doing this, Matt, is that none of it's incredibly complicated. It's actually really simple. It's just not easy. It's just not easy. It takes constant attention.
Yeah. I feel like you brought me to the visual popped in my head where the leader is either riding on the back of other people and like whipping them, or the leader's out front and driving forward. I feel like obviously you've got that down pat where you are the leader that's out front and showing people where to go. What do you feel? Do you feel like that's just ingrained in a personality? Were you ever the guy that was there whipping people and trying to get them to do whatever it is that you wanted them to do? Or do you feel like that was something that you automatically understood right from the get-go?
I learned everything the hard way.
Yeah.
It's definitely been an evolution. It's definitely been an evolution. At this stage in my life, I recognize more that people have certain DNA traits. People can change, but people definitely have different personality types. And getting them in the right seat on the bus is a great term, from good to great. But we pay a lot of attention to people's personality traits and what type of DNA they have, how they are best suited, what their strengths and their weaknesses might be, even the ones that they might not say in an interview. And we spend quite a bit of time figuring out like this wheel of personalities and trying to match, just as my partner and I have done, different complementary skill sets with each other. The team sport, the team approach here is very strong. And this beautiful thing starts happening when you really focus in on this sort of thing and hire A players, hire to core values, is the A players start self-selecting who should be on the team. And they'll let a few B players on. Not everybody's going to be an A player, and that's okay. But C players won't last very long. If they get through the interview process at all. And like you were saying earlier with how I approach it and trying to lead from the front and be a good example, we've got a lot of other great leaders here that are also now doing that. And they're training the people below them. What we try to instill in our folks early on is that if you ever want to elevate to the next position, you've got to delegate what you're doing now. And so getting that people out of that mindset that I've got to hold on tight to my job because if other people learn it, what relevance do I have now, right?
Yeah.
If you want to move up in this company, you better figure out a way to teach people your job.
Yeah. Yeah. What does that look like in reality for you? Are you developing like different playbooks or the team developing different playbooks to explain what it is that they do so that somebody is able to log in? Or is it more like hands-on teaching somebody else exactly what they're doing? What does that
Yeah,
look like from a deliverable for you?
it's both. It's all the above. There's a lot of SOP that has to be immortalized, has to be written down. There's systems for that. As you grow, there's just these new problems happen. We're going through this right now with different growing pains. We'll be on the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies for the 7th time this year. And so,
Congrats.
thank you. It's fun and it creates new problems. But they're the problems I want to have. I want to figure out, okay, we're growing so fast, but how do we stay nimble? We're growing so fast, but how do we stick to our core values? Those sorts of things. It's definitely a lot of hands-on training, but if there's no SOP there to back that up, that you can lose a lot of intellectual property if somebody unfortunately leaves or passes away.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree
Yeah.
more.
One exciting thing is we're at a size now where we've got 2 full-time dedicated trainers, both one on the management and leasing side, and then another person on the maintenance side, internally developing our teams.
Yeah. Yeah. And so your strategy that you deployed to start with the management side of things before you started investing in and sponsoring your own deals,
Yeah.
what did that transition look like when you flipped that, right? Where
Yeah. We fired our management clients in the order of who we liked the least first.
okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And what were those early days like for you when you were taking over those properties that you had invested in? And was that a difficult transition, or did you have everything pretty well buttoned up from all the experience of actually managing all of the other assets first? Was it a pretty easy transition for you?
Property management is anything but easy. And I think a lot of people are learning that right now in this current part of the cycle. Not everything just goes up all the time. Property management, my favorite term is that apartments are the best investment on the planet until you move in the residence.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
The reason why we can get such great returns in this business is because it's incredibly intense and difficult to manage well. And so there's never been an easy point. Now, some of the things are simple, but you are correct to a degree that by having all that experience on the smaller properties and using that to dovetail into our own assets certainly gave us quite a head start and paid huge dividends, because the execution and the operations really mean everything in this business. But to say that we don't still learn would be just a flat out lie, especially trying to grow this business. It's its own organism. As a leader, I have to let people make some mistakes. I have to let them trip and fall, pick themselves up, learn from those mistakes, and continue to evolve. Otherwise, it becomes this big machine with me and my partner as the linchpin. We've got to allow others to make decisions, even if they're going to get only 7 or 8 out of 10 correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a huge win as we grow.
Do you recognize that you're in that kind of position when somebody's talking to you or somebody's giving you an update or something like that, and you actually have to catch yourself from giving any type of direction or advice? Maybe you're giving advice, but you're not necessarily telling people how to do something specifically. Do
Oh,
you find
gosh.
yourself in that position?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I'm terrible at it. My partner's
Yeah.
way better, and that's why he's the COO and running more of the operations and the teams than I am,
Yeah.
because I tend to want to default to tell people how to do it.
Yep. Yep.
Especially
Yeah.
when it comes to marketing and sales. That's my wheelhouse, so I get involved there quite a bit.
Yeah. And so would you say that's what your biggest contribution normally is, the marketing sales? And what does that look like for you? What
Yeah,
types of
yeah.
marketing sales are you doing, deploying, all of that?
I am definitely the entrepreneur CEO from the sales background.
Mm-hmm.
So I sold my way here. Most of my sales and marketing, really all of it's focused around investors, acquiring customers, treating them well, doing what we said we're going to do, getting more customers. So early on, I was the one-man show for attracting equity capital, because what we do is raise all our capital via retail channels. My investors are 50K to, gosh, I think the largest investor now is maybe 15 million with us.
Wow.
And everything in between. I think we're closer to 1,400 families now that invest with us than we are to 1,300, somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And when did you start the capital company? How long ago was that? How long did it take you to grow that 1,400-ish?
So the way I heard your question is, when did you go from being the one guy doing it to actually formalizing a company around
Basically,
it?
yeah.
Yeah. That would have been, I think, 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
Is when we got to the point where we needed more than just me and an admin handling that side of the business.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. So now that company's got a couple dozen people involved in it.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great growth trajectory. I forgot to tell you about this part of it. So what I started doing, God, it's probably almost been a year now or so. So I do this thing on Sundays called life crafting, and I'm really curious what your perspective is on this. So basically, life crafting is setting out, being very intentional. I'm going to accomplish these 3 things this week, and these are the action steps for me to be able to accomplish whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish. And what I realized was that I'm taking guesses onto the action steps that I need to take in order to be able to achieve whatever it is that I'm trying to do. So I started to realize I interview all of these amazing people, very accomplished people all the time. So why don't I ask them for their recipe for accomplishing whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? If I asked you what you feel your highest ROI activity is, what would that be? And then what are some of those action steps that you take, like that recipe, to be able to achieve whatever that goal is? And some people go more of a personal route with this, where it's, I meditate and this is the process to be able to meditate. And other people go very tactile business operation side of things, and it's all about marketing. And we do this, we advertise on Facebook and whatever it is. So I'm just curious, when I ask you, what is your highest ROI activity and those action steps, that recipe to be able to achieve that, what would you say?
Sure. I'll give you a couple different answers. So personally, it's definitely owning my morning, and that around workout, recovery, a little time with the kids before they go off to do their thing. So typically I try to own my morning and get into the office around 10. And then I typically work through lunch. So I don't do lunch meetings anymore. I'm at my desk. I get the same 1 or 2 healthy meals brought to me, and I'm there to try to get my best work done. The highest ROI activities, as now in my position, has really changed to sitting at the feet of other successful CEOs and gathering wisdom that I can bring back to my own business. And I'm so thankful to have really amazing network access now through a couple of different peer groups and global organizations. And at my size and track record, I've earned the right to be able to go sit at the feet of CEOs that are way higher up the mountain than me, and bringing back that wisdom to the fire. And then thinking, actually just blocking out time to think, is a very high ROI activity as a CEO. At least for me, it is.
And when you say thinking, what does that look like for you? There's thinking, and then there's daydreaming, and so you can be off. Oh, I need to do this. I need to get groceries. I need to, so being very focused and making sure that you're thinking about whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. How do you structure that? How do you get into that zone?
I don't try to force it too much. And it really depends on the day. And obviously, you hit the nail on the head. Sometimes there's a lot of noise in there, and it's really hard to think about what needs to be thought about. But typically for me, it's mid-morning and mid-afternoon. And most of the time, it involves around trying to look way out into the future, visualize where I want to be as a company, as a dad, as a husband, all these things, right? And trying to come back to today and think of those steps or those initiatives that need to be moved along today to get us to where we're going. And as you said, trying to drill down into some real small baby steps on what can happen today to get us there. And then the other side of it, I've got what I call my idea holding tank, which is filled with all kinds of things, mostly for the business. Some things never leave there. Maybe 1 out of 10 ideas ends up being a good one. But instead of throwing up all over my team, hey, I read this new book this weekend, or I just got back from a conference and now we're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those things go into a holding tank, and I can think on them more, marinate on them, and try to extrapolate really what's going to have merit and value.
And I'm curious what that looks like. You described this holding tank. Do you have any type of software or system or anything like that that you use to deploy that? Because again,
It's a Google Doc, so it's with me wherever I go, and it's just a running list. I got the opportunity to meet Jamie Dimon
I
a couple
saw that
months.
on your LinkedIn profile. I think you have a picture of him posted.
Yeah, a
as
couple
well.
months ago, and I was able to learn that he still does this to this day. I got this information from an advisor of mine. To this day, he still carries around a big sheet of paper with everything on there that he's given to his team or assigned to somebody that owes him something on the team. And that is the main tool for staying on top of things for one of the most highest profile CEOs of one of the biggest banks on the planet. And that was a real big reminder. Hey, man, just keep it simple. Like, not everything needs to be some fancy new software package.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Me too.
So yes. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I said I love it too.
Yeah. I love the simplicity of it. And I guess I'm in awe that Jamie Dimon is carrying around a piece of paper, a notebook or whatever it is. And that's a
Well,
thing.
it was literally like an 8.5, 11 page, maybe it was 2 pages or one, but I mean, there was scribble all over it, like going this way and that way. And that's what he's using. He took if you look at the picture, he took it out and we snapped a shot of him holding it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he lit up when I asked him about it, which was really fun.
Yeah.
Versus asking him some question he's heard 100 times.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And your distillation of this process, when you're adding things to your list, is there any type of like filtration? Like you said, you've got this holding tank. I'm just curious, like what makes it onto this list? What do you deem as being worthy or worth considering, if you will? I'm curious, like what that looks like for you.
It's very rough writing. So almost everything goes on there. And then I'm going back periodically, consistently, and crossing things out. Oh, the other night, my friends and I were having tequila, and I have some idea. I'm like, oh, and I put that on the list. And then the next morning when I'm sober, that doesn't sound so good in the light of day. Yeah.
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 No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like I said, I'm lucky if 1 out of 10 of them ends up being worth anything.
Yeah. And I just want to jump back over to your process of attracting customers, attracting your investors and whatnot.
Yeah.
What would you say has been, what have you found as being the best way to be able to get that going? I'm sure you guys have a tremendous referral network and that. Are you guys out there doing any type of advertising or anything like that? I'm just curious from your perspective, what you feel has been a fruitful path or tool for you to be able to reach those types of people.
Like you alluded to, it really all started with friends and family and some of those early management clients. We got a great early on set of California investors that we were managing small properties for, that bought into the business plan, and that continued to grow mainly by referrals at first. So the biggest growth engine has been doing well for our current investors and them referring us clients. That's still a huge part of this. We then evolved into adding a lot of value on sites like Bigger Pockets, not soliciting, but just adding value to questions people are asking. That sort of got saturated after a while because my business had a lot of new entrants, new players come in the last few years. Today, we still do all those things, but we advertise on podcasts, we advertise on Bigger Pockets, on other websites as well. And we do a lot of YouTube and Google AdWords, those sorts of things to help acquire more investors. So the name of the game is just to continue to raise capital. And especially right now, we are in the 3rd great asset sale. Speaking of investing in square footage, we're in the 3rd great asset sale, of my career. The first one being the GFC. So far, I've got 100% affirmative out of this one. We all wish we had bought more real estate in 2010, if you were investing at that time. Of course, I was doing little deals. The second one was the first 2 quarters of COVID. Same conditions we have now, 75% transaction volume off a cliff, reduction in transaction volume. Not a lot of buyers bidding on deals. Only people that had to sell were selling. Now we're in a very similar sort of phase of the cycle, although it's lasting longer due to the high interest rates and the speed at which the market for financing really changed. And so it's been a crazy, tough, challenging, but also very exciting time.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you see happening here? Like were today, there's all of this speculation. Are they going to cut rates in July? Are they going to cut rent rates in September? I just saw something maybe yesterday or so where
Yeah.
they're predicting like 100% chance that they're going to decrease or cut rates in September and 7% here in July. So
Uh-huh.
I'm curious what you feel is going to happen when that rate cut does start happening. Do you think everything's going to skyrocket back up again? Is everything going to start booming again? I'm just curious, like having gone through this a couple of times before, I'm curious your perspective on what you feel is going
Yeah.
to happen.
I'll start off by saying I'm a huge Howard Marks fan.
Mhm.
And so I'll steal from Howard just because I love him. I don't try to forecast as much as I used to. I try to recognize what the market conditions are today
Mhm.
and find opportunities in those market conditions. That being said, if we cut rates one time in September, it's not game on again for most people. That won't be enough, especially for a lot of the assets that were bought or financed in the last couple of years where people were very thin on their underwriting. So they maybe just met
Mhm.
the minimum obligations of leverage and debt cover to get a deal closed. And then when shit happens, there's no cushion to batten down the hatches and sail through that storm
And
and make
shit
it
always
through.
happens too.
And that creates, and then you've got liquidity drying up, and so that creates these buying opportunities. So right now, there's parts of me that hopes that the market changes soon, but there's other parts of me that likes these market conditions. Now, it's incredibly harder to raise equity right now.
Mhm.
We're one of the only groups that seems to be able to be doing it still in this market, which is giving us buying opportunities. We're talking about quality asset that there were 30 bidders on in 2020,
Mhm.
21, and now there's 2, and we're
Yeah,
one of them. So
yeah.
it's an amazing time to buy, and we're set up in our portfolio where we've been able to ride through the storm because when we entered that storm, we weren't on a razor's edge hoping that today would be like tomorrow. And that's a lot of credit goes to my partner in the asset management team for stocking up the granaries before winter hit. And yeah, a big part of me likes the fact that we're in this market. And if we can succeed during the tough times, then we're going to look pretty darn smart when the market normalizes. I
Yeah.
don't think we're going to get back to a crazy game on where everything makes sense and everybody can get a loan and everything goes up. I think that low interest rate or ZIRP, zero interest rate policy, is not coming back without a severe deflationary event. And we've got a lot of inflationary forces now in the mix. The world is splitting up. Countries are becoming more inwardly focused. We're bringing jobs back home. We want a green thing. There's a lot of infrastructure investment. That's all inflationary.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's all inflationary. I don't think it's hyperinflationary. I mean, I'm certainly not a bear. I'm very bullish on the US market over the long run. There will certainly be more bumps in the road. There always are.
Yeah. 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 No, I couldn't agree more.
But hard assets that what I love about multifamily is it's a hard asset and people need a house, people need a roof to live in.
Mhm.
And there's going to be a percentage out there that are going to be renters. Right now it's about 40%. Does it go to 50? I don't know. But 40% is good.
Yeah.
I think we'll still have population growth. We like the Midwest. It doesn't boom, but it doesn't bust, Matt. It just steadily goes along, and some people still call it the Rust Belt. I heard somebody call it the Rust Belt the other day, and
Yep.
that puts a smile on my face because they don't know what's happening here in the Midwest from a jobs and quality of life standpoint, and even heck, even climate. Indiana's weather these days is way better than it was when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually going to ask, that was going to be probably my final question was about the market and your focus to be in this area. We have assets here. I'm from Northeast Ohio, so we have assets in this location, and a
Nice.
lot of people, yeah, a lot of people shy away from that. I'm curious, obviously you guys have found great success by investing in the Midwest area. Do you get a lot of pushback and have investors say, "No, I only want like the Sun Belt areas. I don't want to invest up in those regions," or do you feel like you've been able to jump over those?
The individual retail investor gets it. And that is a quickly growing segment of the market. And what most retail investors, and when I'm talking retail, anybody that's net worth $1 million or more, retail accredited investor, they're all waking up to the fact that the wealthiest people on the planet, ultra high net worth families, pensions, endowments, sovereign wealth funds, they're 35% allocated to privates. And that's why Yale's endowment has been so successful. The individual investor is waking up to that, and that's a huge growing segment. And what's interesting is the individual investors get the Midwest story a lot more often. Where I still hear the poo-pooing of the Midwest is from the institutions, right? Oh, we have to be in the Southeast. We have to be in the Sun Belt, the Sun Belt, the Smile States. We want to be in these gateway markets. And I get it. They only need a 9, 11, 12% return, right? So they can afford to pay a lot more. I can get the same institutional quality assets in the Midwest. I can pool them and give them offer them directly to accredited and retail investors without any middlemen, no broker dealers, nothing of that sort. And I can consistently achieve returns much, much greater than that. And so I like the fact that there's still a lot of attraction to those areas. Yeah, sure. The Southeast has got great growth rates. A lot of people moving there. But because everybody knows it, it increases what people are willing to pay for assets and crushes the return. And my investors are looking for something north of 20 IRR versus what an institution is willing to accept.
Yeah, yeah. And how important is the growth rate for the area in the assets that you choose to invest in?
Yeah.
Is that one of the main criteria? Just like down south, that's one of the first things that everybody says. Everybody's moving down here, and the the population's growing so quickly. This is such a great area to invest in. Obviously, like you said, up here, it's a little bit more level, no
It's
big highs, big
the
lows.
tortoise versus the hare.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yep.
For us, Indy's a great example. Indianapolis has averaged a little over 3% rent growth for almost 40 years now. And it doesn't vary, it doesn't vary from that mean too often. It stays pretty close to the mean throughout individual years. And population growth, 1.5%, 2%. In some markets, it's much higher than that. So we love finding those suburbs that are small but growing quickly. Both those scenarios fit very well into our model.
Yeah, interesting.
You take like a Vegas or a Phoenix right now. They were looking like, or in Austin, they were looking like standout mega return market until they're not. And because they swung so high or so far from the mean reversion, when it cuts through the other way, it's much deeper. And so if you're a market timer and you're looking to come into those markets when they crash, that's great. Our model is to find steady value creation, consistent returns, compounded over a long period of time with not a lot of volatility.
Yep. Would you say that you're more of a buy and hold type shop, or are you typical value add, hold it for 5 years and then resell it? What's your kind of?
We've done a lot of the holding and reselling. I turned 46 this year, and as I get older, I get more interested in the after-tax return than anything else. And what's really exciting as we grow and scale is to move most of our assets into semi or fully perpetual vehicles, which will offer the investor that wants to stay in long term and continue to compound the ability to do at a very tax efficient vehicle and continue to defer those capital gains. And at the same time, offer the ability for investors to choose when they want to get off the train and take their marbles and go home, and they'll be able to pick when they want to have those taxable events. That's one of the things we're working on right now, and we have been working on it for a while, that I'm pretty darn excited about.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I feel like this is a great place to cut it and ask if there's anybody out there listening who might be interested in investing with you or learning more from you or learning more about your company. What would be the best ways to reach out and get in touch with you?
bamcapital.com's a great place to start. I would ask anybody, I would say thank you for checking us out. I would challenge anybody to do as much deep due diligence on us as you want. We're now on the Fidelity, Charles Schwab platforms. So we've worked very hard to provide great due diligence. And further, please check out some of our videos on our culture and what we've created here. It really is something that's hard to put into words, but makes a lot of difference in the execution of our wealth strategy for our clients.
I love it. I love it. Ivan, thank you so much for the time and the insights and advice. It's been a great conversation.
Been an honor to be here, Matt. I hope I delivered some value to the audience.
Absolutely. I think you definitely have done that. So thank you.
Where in Northeast Ohio are you?
I'm in Akron, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you buying?
What's up?
What kind of deals you doing?
Right now, so we have assets in Shaker Heights, where Shaker Heights is, suburb of Cleveland.
I know Cleveland very little.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have Shaker Heights is one of those areas that was where Carnegie and Rockefeller and all of that. So Shaker Heights was actually the most affluent suburb, like in the 1920s or so. So there's these beautiful mansions and beautiful areas.
Oh, cool. All
Shaker Heights.
pre-war.
Yeah. Really
Neat.
traditional older community.
So-
But we've got some assets there. We've got some assets down in Atlanta. My partner's down in Atlanta.
Okay.
But
What are you guys typically buying vintage-wise?
so we've started with older assets. So
Yep.
that Shaker asset
Yep.
was one of the largest ones that we had. Those ones are 50s. I think the newest one is 65.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Did
some
the
of
same
our-
thing when I was starting.
Yep. I think some of our Atlanta assets are 60s, 70s, something like that. So actually right now, and I started with this, the Connected Capital group that we're involved with, and this might be something you could be interested in, not
Yeah.
sure.
Tell me more.
So basically what Connected Capital is, do you know what Raise Masters is? Have you heard of Raise Masters, Hunter
I
Thompson?
think I saw something on my Instagram feed that popped up.
Yeah, so Hunter Thompson started this group called Raise Masters, basically
Yes.
teaching how to
Hunter, I've been on Hunter's podcast. He's popped
Yeah.
up on my Instagram.
Yeah,
That's
so
Connected Capital's him.
no, so Connected Capital spun out of Raise Masters.
Okay.
We've been around, I'm going to say last October or so. We were actually, I was part of Raise Masters. We just canceled our membership there recently. Anyway, so we spun out last October. We had a Raise Masters event, and this group started really coming together, where it's a bunch of capital raisers that are all coming together to be able to split all the due diligence on projects, find the best opportunities. Everybody's pooling their resources, pooling their deal flow together. Hey, I've got this guy. Here's an asset, or here's his asset that he's looking to raise for. And then we go in and we do our own due diligence. And if we like that asset, we like the sponsor, we like the story and all of that, we'll raise for it. And I'm big on systems. I'm big on processes. I've had a technology company I think I started that in 2008, 2009. So I help them set up this entire system that's running to be able to bring in people and manage all the members, all of the people that are
Community.
the community that's coming together here. So
Nice.
I thought it was such a great idea. I wanted to latch myself right on with the founders of this and make sure that I was able to help participate in that. So anyway, we've been again around for, call it 6, 7, 8 months now, something like that. And I think we've raised about $8 million now or so altogether. I think we've raised for 4 different projects. I'm sure you probably have heard of Rise 48. We raised for a couple of their projects, a couple other mobile home parks, and another sponsor for another multifamily. So anyway, long
Nice.
story short, we are always looking for great sponsors. And ideally, what we want to be able to do is find those few sponsors that we know their program, and it's just more of a programmatic relationship where we don't have to go and do all the underwriting and qualifying for the sponsor and all of that. And it's just making sure that we like the particular asset, and then we can help raise for it. So the group is about 800 people in total. I would say that normally there's call it about 75 to 100 people that are active in it pretty well every week. We have a meeting every Friday where we bring in a sponsor and they talk about their particular opportunity, and then as a group. We kick them out and then we talk about it and see if there's interest. And then we dive in and start doing the due diligence if it's something that sounds interesting. And we have about 180-point due diligence process that we send everybody through, and it's qualifying the sponsor, their track record, their history, the asset, the legal, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, so that's what we are really focused on now and working on growing that side of things. So we have a fund. We have a bunch of funds set up that a lot of people are running all of these capital raises through. Do you know Avestor at all? Have you heard of Avestor?
Avestor?
Yeah, Avestor. Yeah, it's basically a fund platform. That's where a lot of us have our funds through. So I was just curious.
Gotcha. How big's your fund?
Ours is about, let's see, what are we up to? About 100 million now or so.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's not.
And how many sponsors?
That has, I'm going to say there's probably about 75, 80. Not sponsors. I'm talking about investors in ours. Sponsors we have invested in.
So how many partners are in your fund with you? Like how many GPs are in your fund?
So right now it's only my partner and I are the only GPs in that fund. We have basically we separated things. We have our own investment company where we will buy assets through. And quite honestly, we set up the fund because we thought we were going to use the fund to be able to buy assets through. And then our deal flow dried up and we weren't able to find very many good deals. And that's where this other thing came out. So now our fund is basically there to bring in investors into this. And our fund is set up a little bit unique. That's why I was asking about Avestor. So unlike a blind fund where investors are just putting their money into a pool and then it's up to the sponsor to be able to say, I'm going to use it to purchase this property, ours is a fractionalized fund. So we can put deal specific opportunities into our fund and we then expose that to our investor base and the investors can invest directly into whatever the particular asset is. They want to put 50, 100, 200, whatever it is. They can
cherry pick deals inside the fund.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's the way that a lot of people are set up in Connected Capital, which is this whole fund of fund model. So yeah, so that's how we have things set up and what we're working on.
Interesting.
Working on now. Yeah.
I still can't get my arms around like how you mechanically have that where, hey, I want to be in this deal, but I don't want to be in this deal.
Yep. So that's part of the fractionalized fund. So basically the way that it works is there's a PPM that is set up for the fund, more or less. And then each specific deal has its own disclosure sheet, which you're basically disclosing all of how the revenues and how the splits and all of that stuff work on that particular deal. You bring in so much and you're investing it into that deal and on the back end side of things. After you go through the raise, you convert this raise into an investment, and then you issue out shares to each one of the people based on how much they contributed to that particular raise. Yeah. So as we get cash flow in from the distributions from the property, we again use Avestor to be able to basically funnel that back through. And it's all segmented or all split out based on whatever their slice is for the particular asset. So if there's a $5,000 distribution, this guy's got 10%, this guy's got 12.5%, whatever it is, it just automatically spits it out and then we can send out the distribution through the platform. So
interesting.
Yeah. So it's a great way to be able to do it.
And you've got 100 million in there already?
Very close to it. Yeah. So we started that 4 years ago now, I think, something like that. And we like doing that. So we also have our own property management company, and you're alluding to some of those stories. I'm the one who has to do all the operations on the property management side of things too. And it's a lot. It's difficult. And I feel like I'm getting burnt out from dealing with everything. This just seems to be a much, I don't want to say easier way, but it's less involved, and we enjoy talking to people and meeting people, getting customers in. What you're doing, we like bringing in those investors. And
your fund invests in other funds, like you said, you're a fund of funds.
Yeah, exactly. Gotcha. So yeah, depending how the
how are you able to do that without being an RIA?
And that's a great question. How did this explanation go? Most people never ask this, so it's been a long time since I've had to. I believe that it's all because of the the way that the PPM is structured and the disclosures are set up on there, that basically eliminates us from having to have any type of qualifications or like.
You don't need major, you don't require major decisions or sale
No,
clauses or anything like that.
no.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, this is the way that some people are doing special purpose vehicles, one-off type things for each one of these investments, but because of the way Investor is set up, we don't have to do a PPM. This is basically where Investor comes in being much less expensive, because if you're doing any type of special purpose vehicle for each one of these investments, the way that we're doing this, it gets to be expensive because you have to do a PPM for each one. And it's $5,000 or so per PPM.
Sure, totally.
If you just do 4 investments, the Investor platform is less expensive because you don't have to do a PPM for each one. You just do the deal disclosure and issue that out to each one of the investors for each one of the specific deals. So
interesting. Sounds like it's working.
Yeah. It's a great way to be able to help people raise capital and getting to be involved in a lot more different types of opportunities. So yeah, if that's of interest to you, I can, certainly make some introductions if you're interested in, pitching to anybody. And maybe you guys are in a position where you don't even need any other type of.
Well, if you can be a fund of funds, we've got 1,626 apartments now from across Pittsburgh, Indy, Bentonville, Arkansas, and Kansas City suburbs. I think the oldest one is 2015 and the newest one's 2023. Our discounts on purchase have been anywhere from 15 to I think 25%. And let's see here, I think our leverage is like 63. We're redoing all this stuff to show the investors because the portfolio is pretty much set now. We're in the final capital raise stage. I think the value prop per door per month, I think, is approaching like $300. Now, what do you think about this? I'm going to advertise it $300 per door per month in upside potential. I think that resonates with the retail investor much more than like an annual number.
I could see that. Yeah, because I would almost say that it needs to be broken down a little bit more because that doesn't necessarily resonate with a retail investor. If there's a way to be able to figure out like what that $300 can actually mean.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about like the overall, like here's the advertisement, right? Or here's the at a glance. Of course, you could click through and go into the offering deck and learn that's a mix of cost reduction, operations optimization, and bringing rents to market.
Yeah. I feel like I like the concept. I feel like it might not necessarily be something that a lot of people necessarily can grasp, which could go one way or the other. This is something new. Like I've never seen anybody display it like this. Let me learn more. Or it might be like, I don't understand that.
But maybe just getting the total number, whatever that 50 million of value creation might be or whatever it is.
Yeah. Because that's the way that everybody else describes it. And again, like I said, it might be good that you're trying to describe it in a different way. It might resonate with them and stand out as being like, oh, I've never seen this before. Let me check it out.
Yeah.
It's just like everybody else. And
well, so like
battling that story.
Let's say you were interested and we went through the due diligence process. I assume you want to do a 180-point due diligence process on all 6 assets inside the fund.
So I will say that for situations like that, we've struggled with it, just being quite honest with you, because that does get to be a lot of work where you're trying to do all of these. And actually, let me ask you this. When you're saying inside the fund there's 6 assets, are you still growing that and buying more assets with that? Or
the last asset in the fund will close in less than a month.
So that's different. So some of the problems that we've had before is like having an open fund where they want to be able to bring the capital in, but we don't know where they're going to be placing it. So we don't know what type of asset it is, but having all of those assets.
Well, let's say you agree. Let's say you agreed and you're like, we like this deal. We want to put capital in it. Like how much capital would you end up allocating? Like roughly?
Again, just being completely transparent, the most that we've raised so far for one deal is $2.7 million. And we did that in about a month or so. That'd be like way too much work on you and my team for $2.7 million. And again, this is the conversation.
An RIA that put in 35 million didn't do that sort of due diligence. What they're doing now is they're typically underwriting for funds, the sponsor, right? So they're looking at our internal processes, our track record, our audit, compliance, that sort of thing. versus
yeah, and
and they're banking on the track record and that we know what we're doing.
Yep, and that's one of the main things that we, look at as well. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. And again, we've just been doing this since October or so when we brought this all together. So we're
I
still
mean,
learning how this all works.
Yeah,
But
take it for what it's worth. I think if you can continue to evolve into, hey guys, we're not necessarily betting on every deal. We're betting on management teams and sponsors.
makes sense, yeah.
Then I think you could maybe scale that more, right? Because what could happen is you've got every 50K investor, 25K investor that's, I want to see the underwriting model. I want to see all your assumptions, right? I want to see every line by line down to the penny. And fund managers like us are like, nah, go pound sand. Like,
Yep.
we're a fund. We don't do that anymore. Like, here's our track record. It's audited. It's not just us saying it.
Yep. No, and that makes perfect sense too. And you made me think of something else. I can't remember what that was, but yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, and that's great feedback. And I'll say, maybe this is what I was going to say, is that we haven't necessarily been tested yet to see how much we can raise altogether either. So just throwing that out there, because basically every deal that we've done so far, we basically had allocations that were given to us that you raised this much. One of the 2.71 that we just did, there was about $700,000 that they came up short. And again, I don't know. It doesn't sound like you're ever in situations where you're coming up short with your raises either.
No. So what we've been able to do this year is my partner and I just put our own capital to work to close deals. Then we can continue to raise after it's closed.
And that's exactly what they ended up doing too. I shouldn't say to close. They did the exact same thing. And this was Rise 48. I don't know if you know who they are.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So with Rise,
what do you guys get in return for that 2.7 million?
What was that one?
Are you just charging your investors, or are you getting a piece of the GP, or?
Yeah, so we haven't gotten a piece of the GP yet. We charge our investors about 2% or so, and then depending on the deal, we've sometimes been able to negotiate what we're calling a due diligence fee, basically doing all of the upfront work and all of that, rather than calling it like any type of an acquisition fee, because we're not on the GP side of things. We're not, really able to do that. So the due diligence fee we charge back to the sponsor, which basically the sponsor's paying that out of their acquisition fee. That we've gotten 2% before for that too. Typically, where our spreads about that.
Well, so. It sounds like you got a good business in the making.
Yeah, it's plugging along, but yeah, that's what we've been working on, and it's been fun, been interesting.
Well, it's been a great conversation, man. I think you're a great host, and this is one of the more fun ones I've been on in quite some time. So thanks for doing what you do.
Yeah, no problem. We will. I think with this is probably about a month or so behind on edits and all of that, but we'll let you know when it goes live, and we'll share all the raw stuff with you too, and we can go from there. So
yeah, that'd be great. If we can get that soon, we'll start editing now and linking back to you and doing all the social things.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Beautiful.
All right, man.
Excellent, Ivan.
Matt, thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.
Talk soon.
Take care.
See you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Invest in Square Feet. I hope Ivan's insights on unearthing opportunities in today's market have ignited some fresh ideas for your investment strategy. If you enjoyed this episode, why not hit the subscribe button and leave us a sparkling review? Share it with your fellow real estate enthusiasts, and let's keep this investment wisdom flowing. Remember, adaptability and insight are your secret weapons in the real estate game. Until next time, keep investing smartly and stay sharp. I'm Matt Shields, signing off. We'll catch you later.